I'm Mike, and today, why veganism is harder than it should be, particularly how our own human social wiring and society's dietary norms work together to make going vegan and staying vegan harder than it needs to be. We're going to glean some insights from some hilarious social science experiments, look at some dietary population trends, and also the reasons why people failed to maintain a vegan diet. Hint, it's not because they had a protein deficiency. To find a sociological answer to the challenges of going vegan, you first have to ask the question, why do people eat animal products at all? Why did I eat animal products before I went vegan? I covered one possible angle in one of my earlier videos, why good people eat bad things, where I talked about Stanley Milgram's experiment, where he gets virtually all normal people to administer a lethal shock to an innocent person when commanded by an authority figure or doctor, and how that connects to eating animals against our own morals, starting as children due to a parental authority figure. Okay, that's certainly part of it, especially when you're younger, but that doesn't explain the whole story. Why do you keep eating animal products once your parents are no longer as much of an authority figure? Well, I think I've come down to one thing, one force more powerful than any other in this realm, and that is, to put it bluntly, we are carnivorous sheep. When it comes to eating animals and their products, we generally merely follow societal trends instead of making decisions for ourselves. There are many experiments showing that you can make somebody repeat the actions of those around them without an explanation, and sometimes even subconsciously. In this waiting room experiment, in the beginning, everybody except this woman was in on it. They were an actor that was told to stand up whenever the buzzer went off. Not only does this woman stand up when the buzzer goes off without question, but she continues to do it after all the original standing people, who again were actors, are gone, and then trains a whole new group of innocent bystanders to do it too. And when asked, she doesn't really have a satisfactory reason for why she did it or why people were standing up at all.
Everybody was doing it, so I thought I was supposed to.
They essentially show that you can train a person to repeat an arbitrary action just because those around them are doing it. And this goes all the way back to the classic elevator experiments of candid camera. Actors turn one direction and the subject will turn as well, and then actors take their hat off, subject takes their hat off, and when they put their hat back on, same thing. Look at that guy's face. The human is a tribal social animal that, for good evolutionary reason, is wired to do what the rest of the tribe does. We survived acting as a cohesive unit, and if there's one aspect that's important for survival, it's food. So think about how this phenomenon of human nature expands out to diet. Which brings me to the main point. It's not hard to be vegan, it's society that's hard to be vegan in. It's not more difficult to eat vegan foods. A veggie burger is not harder to chew than a beef burger, but procuring vegan foods within the current animal-based food system is harder. Nearly every restaurant menu, family dinner, wedding, or festival is dominated by people consuming animal products, and we have the urge to conform. But conforming is not always the right thing. In the past, we've conformed to racism, sexism, and in some cultures, even cannibalism. Imagine trying to stop eating humans in a cannibalistic culture. If every night the only thing on the menu is human stew, and then you finally get the courage to kick it down a notch of killing with like a rabbit or something, then everyone's gonna turn around and look at you and be like, where do you get your protein? Breaking out of that social dietary norm is hard, especially in the case of animal products today, where we have engineered an experience that disconnects our food from the animals they once were, making those animals much further away in your mind than the direct pressure to also do what the people in front of you at the dinner table are doing.
Once I decided to go with it, then I felt much more comfortable.
But imagine if the food choices in restaurants and weddings and family dinners were flipped to where very few had any eggs or meat or cheese at all. Would more people be vegan? This brings me to the case of Will Tuttle, the author of the World Peace Diet. Decades ago, he was at the farm, an intentional community where 900 people essentially were vegan. He went vegan for the same reason that most people eat animal products, because it was the dietary norm. He was essentially standing up when everyone else stood up, but in this case, it was an effortless transition to a vegan diet. And while I'm talking about it, I think there's one last lesson to be gleaned from the waiting room experiment, and that is that logic is an afterthought when following social cues. She didn't have have a good explanation for why everybody, including herself, was standing. And this is illustrated so well in the logic used to defend meat consumption. Logic that is so weak it would never hold up in an academic debate or a court of law. It's really just to fill in the reason for their habits as an afterthought and would never be a good enough reason to start that habit. And that's because they never actually chose to eat meat. It was just instinctual social conformity needs that led them to do so. Because lions eat meat and I have canines were never good reasons to start eating meat. But all these social pressures are not just what keep people from going vegan, they're also what push people back off of a vegan diet. If you talk to most vegans, they will likely tell you that one of the hardest parts about being vegan is non-vegan family, aka most families. I know a guy who's vegetarian all of his life and he went to stay with his wife's family for an extended period of time and came back a meat eater. Romantic relationships are a large reason why vegans fail. You might remember that somewhat recent Humane Research Council, which is now Faunalytics, study that showed that 70% of vegans fail, 84% of vegetarians fail. It also found that 1/3 of former vegans and vegetarians gave up the diet while living with a meat-eating partner. And in the words of Humane Research Council Executive Director Shay Green, it is, quote, a lack of social support from partners or family and a dislike for being seen as different by their friends and social peers based on their dietary preferences. So the biggest problem for vegans is that in today's society, going vegan is electing to be different, electing to become a type of minority, which takes a lot of gumption. The good news is it is getting easier. Non-dairy milks like almond milk alone is responsible for 5% of dairy's market share, and meat replacements are now available in like 20,000 stores worldwide. And in terms of cultural change, vegans are dietary innovators. I'm sure that you have seen this chart before. This is the curve of the adoption of new technologies broken up into groups. Within most populations, vegans are still at the innovator status. Within the US, it's usually 1% to 2% cited. Berlin, I looked at, is about 2.3%, but places like Israel, depending on the source, 5 to 13%, which puts them in the early adopters category. This change can be reflected in generations, with millennials leading the way, which makes the strongest case because about 1 in 10 millennials are vegan or vegetarian, which is twice the rate of the entire population. And the good news for the vegan movement is that social pressures in food benefit it more than just the occasional vegan intentional community. They benefit veganism in the form of the food tribe. As Eric Pierce, director of strategy and insight at the media company New Hope, says, as we are, quote, becoming a nation of food tribalists with cultures built around close-knit viral communities based on personal values and behaviors. So veganism is a food tribe that you can belong to, that you can find a sense of community in. They might like their drama, but they love their animals. Seriously, that's just YouTube. Go to a meetup or something. In the end, when looking at why more people aren't going vegan, it appears there is no force that is more powerful when looking at maybe meat and dairy commercials or dietary preferences or nutritional beliefs. None are more powerful than the social, instinctual drive to conform. Our human nature is sort of stacking the odds against us in terms of eating within our morals and eating healthy when these animals are being slaughtered and forcibly impregnated in a far-off land, but people in front of us are eating steaks and milkshakes. So in order to be a vegan, you kind of need to be a bit of a rebel. Or an innovator, whichever way you want to look at it. Alright, that's it for today. Feel free to like and subscribe because you know most of society will not. Alright, let me know down below what you thought, and see you next time.